Hey guys, this is Joe Deckelmeyer with Screen Rant. We are at Comic-Con 2023. How you guys? I'm with the creative minds of Justice League Warworld. I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves and what you guys did on the film.
Butch Lukic, producer, executive, the big mind.
The mega mind, if you will.
Yeah, and the smaller minds. Next.
Jim Krieg, I am a smaller producer, but a huge talent and a big mouth.
And also a big Sesame Street fan. We just found that from earlier.
I'm Jeff Momister. I'm the director.
Ernie Altbacker, writer.
Big mind.
Jeremy Adams, I'm one of the writers.
Amazing. Well, we're gonna start with you, Jeremy. Let's talk about
That's right.
Warworld. Tell me a little bit about Warworld and explaining these different variants we see of these iconic characters.
Oh boy. I mean, in terms of Warworld, if you're familiar with DC at all, you understand Mongol and the Warworld and all that stuff. I think what's interesting about this is we get into that story a little bit differently, and it definitely keeps the viewer off kilter, not knowing exactly, you know, hey, this is titled Warworld. What's happening? Where are we? And it was great because when Jim called us up and said, hey, we're going to do this thing, could you come over? And we started talking about the genres involved and different little silos of stories that we could tell to get to the overarching story. It was just kind of a new original take on how to get to it.
I'm a huge fan of the DC animated films and Warner Brother animation just in general. These movies are so gorgeous, and I love seeing you guys take our classic characters like Superman and put them in like a old school sci-fi type of thing, and then Wonder Woman being a Western. Can you talk to me about how these heroes change when they're dropped into these different settings?
Well, I mean, I can speak a little bit to the Wild West with Wonder Woman section in it. I think I pitched that part, and I always liked, I hadn't seen that before, and so I wanted to do Wonder Woman as Clint Eastwood, Clintina Eastwood, a woman with no name, comes into town, sees the corruption, and so even though she has amnesia, like our other leads of the Trinity of Justice League, she has an innate sense of justice, and that doesn't go away, even though she doesn't know exactly who she is.
That is incredible. Now, this is a rated R film, which is going to premiere later on tonight.
The nudity is tasteful and artsy. There's no nudity.
It's mostly rated R because of the violence. It's there's a lot of blood let in, sword fighting, gunfights. So the blood's coming from, or the violence and the R rating's coming from that.
Well,
which originally, honestly, it's a PG-13.
If you cut out the blood, with swords and guns, there's not a lot left.
Okay, fair enough. Because I was going to say, did that having a rated R kind of like help you, give you the freedom to tell a story that you wanted to tell without compromising?
No, I mean,
anything?
originally we were planning PG-13 because DC made a mandate for the last few years, only PG-13. We thought we had a PG-13, but once we got
These
into...
guys are so bloody and
Once
vicious
we got
and
into
violent.
After Effects, we added more blood, assuming we'd get, a milder rated MP's whatever rater. He turned out to be a nutcase and put it as an R.
Really?
What a beloved nutcase.
I mean, it's like a 1984 PG-13. You know what I mean?
Right, there we go. 19, that's a perfect...
I mean,
Planet of the Apes was G.
Wow.
is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
look, the ratings board, aren't you supposed to get 2 or 3 shootings in the face or decapitations and still be a PG-13?
Yeah, we don't even have that.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
How many F-bombs do you get, Jeff?
We don't do any swearing.
One for PG-13?
Is it one for PG-13?
We're
Three
in
S-bombs
we're in
and
the
one
weeds
F-bomb.
now.
This has turned into a talk about
I will trade you.
Well, which dynamic are you most excited for fans to kind of see in this world? Because we're seeing our Trinity dropped into these different worlds. What dynamics with other characters are you excited to see them interact with?
Well, I mean, I like, obviously, the West part with Jonah Hex and the fact that we wanted to do a spaghetti Western version. But it plays out spaghetti Western with Tombstone kind of connotation. So I love that. But Warlord has always been one of my favorite comic books. I read almost every issue until they canceled it. So I definitely wanted to
You
get
sound
that.
angry.
He's not
Well,
bitter. He's
they
not
can't
bitter at
fucking
all.
take
No bitter.
Well, you got your revenge now because here we got this movie now. Now, even with playing with these different variants, you guys are still able to capture the heart of these characters. What does it need? What do you get? What's the key to capturing the heart of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and tapping into that every story should kind of have?
I think it's great that you notice that in some ways, even though they don't have their memories and they're kind of forced into these completely different roles, they still are who they are on some basic level. And so they're the characters we like. They don't know who they are, but they are still who they are.
Yeah, and Bruce Wayne's a barbarian in Warworld, and he's also a what do you call it?
Vigilante.
No, not a vigilante.
Oh, you mean in the other story?
Yeah. in
And
Warworld.
he's like an agent in the...
Well, no, he's a mercenary. Sorry.
Okay.
So, but that could factor into like if it went a different way with Bruce Wayne as he aged, instead of becoming Batman, he could have easily been a mercenary, based
Right.
on how he grew up or how his
If he knew the
parents were
rule
killed.
of steel, he would
Yeah.
be.
It also works as a story point in that if they did have amnesia and you left Superman in Metropolis as a newsman, he would figure it out a lot faster. So putting them in situations that are far afield of where they started from actually helps the puppet master's goals for the movie.
But the core of the characters are still there, right? Like this is Clark Kent at its heart, Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, and Bruce Wayne.
He's super mild-mannered, for sure.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, that's what the characters are telling stories about. So at their core, we have to answer with their decisions that they make in the story are based on who they are at their core.
Yeah, it's them without the knowledge of who they really are, what their powers are. They're kind of like starting from scratch again, but their inherent nature is going to stay there.
Shining through, the Trinity shining through at their core. Now, you're able to bring in a ton of DC heroes into this world to team up with
Not
the
as many as we wanted.
and we're gonna get. That's what I wanted to ask you. So they're teaming up with the big three. Which are your favorite heroes that you brought in, and what characters did you really want to bring in but didn't maybe quite fit for this film?
Well, I wanted Batlash because I read Batlash too as a kid. It was a great comic book, Western. Obviously, Warlord.
That's where that came from.
Jonah Hex was a given with all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim wanted the Silver Knight.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
Because
get
he
the Silver
loves,
Knight, I didn't get the Viking Prince.
I'm sitting there, Silver Knight. We're going to the barbarian world. We're not going to
Shining Knight.
Prince
Shining
Valiant.
Knight. That's a deep cut too. That's
Yeah.
Just League Unlimited. I like Shining Knight. What about you? Was there a character that you wanted to include, or a character that you loved that they included in this film?
I didn't get to
You didn't
chime
get to
in
pick-
on
I
that. I get the story after the decisions are made, and then I get to tell it. But the characters we picked are the ones I would have wanted to, especially Wonder Woman in that spaghetti western. That was
Yeah, and
I was
there's
very
a
much
couple of
looking forward to that.
characters that are going to be in it that we haven't announced, so we can't. 'cause
It's
they're
not
part of the
Detective
story.
Chimp.
Right.
Detective Chimp would
Which
be
is
great.
another one Jim wanted.
Yeah.
That's a great choice, though. I love Detective Chimp. I love the whole, was it Justice League Dark or the, no, what was it, Shadow Pact? It was a big thing that I really
No,
liked.
we don't have Angel and the Ape. Angel on her own.
Yeah. That's deep.
Wow.
That is a DC
Well, there
deep
was
cut.
a lot of Western characters too that we were talking about. And what's
Tomahawk.
Tomahawk, Powwow Smith,
I don't even know if you could say these anymore.
Diablo.
Yeah.
A lot of those that were go-tos in the DC era in the '70s. But again, we couldn't pack all that in.
Are they in the
'Cause
background? Did like Dusty
No, I
sneak
couldn't put them in.
there?
I didn't want to do that because then people would start looking in the background going, hey, isn't that so-and-so? Instead of keying in on the main story, which is the front with Wonder Woman and Jonah Hex.
Now, telling this story is pretty large and epic, and putting it all together has to be a challenge. What was the most challenging part of bringing Warworld together?
I think trying to have three different stories in one, which have very different tonal approaches, which
Right.
is like a spaghetti western, and then you have a Conan the Barbarian, and then you have like a Twilight Zone / film noir told in black and white, and trying to keep the pacing appropriate to the time period and what they are, but also have that fit into the story as a whole. and then also have it where you're not giving away too much too early, where you're transitioning between each. So this is one of those unusual storytelling or unusual stories that we had to tell that was very, very challenging, that it was totally different. It's not something we saw from DC.
I tell you, writing it is exactly the same.
Really?
You know, so we each kind of split it up with Josie Campbell, who couldn't be here, but then handing it over to the poor animation side, it's like, here, make 4 different movies.
Well,
Bye.
It was kind of written like a TV episode, 3 episodes put together, and just bridging each episode together. Because individually they wrote the 3 parts.
Right.
So they're doing their version, as a separate episode, basically.
And then there's a whole 4th part where they fight the big bad and they
Right.
come together as So it's really 4 movies.
Well, I mean, that's really fascinating that you kind of spoke to about the it being almost like television, because what's the biggest challenge of making a coherent story that you guys are kind of all writing these individual pieces? I'm sure you guys are in contact
Well,
with each
they
other
knew
about.
where it was
Sure.
going, obviously, but the bridging part is more of a visual.
Right.
How you get from the West to the barbarian world to the black and white world.
Now, what are you guys? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
What are you guys most excited for fans, DC fans, to see with this new animated film?
The whole thing, I think the fun of it is that it's 3 worlds, and we haven't quite seen it like that before. So it'll be interesting to see if they respond to it, which hopefully they will.
These DC animated films are just gorgeous, though. I mean, they're so good. Every single one of them. I love every single one of them.
You're the best kind of audience member.
Well, I'm a big DC fan. Like it was my fandom growing up, and like I like very unique characters, like Ambush Bug, like really random characters.
Well, I'm
like
hearing a
that.
lot of push for Ambush Bug lately.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Well, Jelinek put one in Brave and the Bold, I think.
Yep, Ambush Bug is in Brave and the Bold. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because I love what you guys do with the DC animation at adapting some of these classic storylines. Do you guys? I know you talked about Batlash a little bit, and I know he's in this film. But are there any other DC storylines that you guys want to adapt for animation? Because if I have one, I would love to see Kingdom Come.
Well,
Okay,
we'll put it in the hopper.
We originally were, we talked about Kingdom Come as an afterwards, after this, but changing regimes, you can't, we couldn't go forward with anything
We'll see.
like that.
You never know.
They might incorporate it in the future with the New World, but that was one that we talked about as an obvious, possibility to continue. Not this continuity, but something more Justice League and larger. Again, other things, it's personal and individual stuff that I would like to do, and it's like, I like the, one comic book or two comic book issue stories.
Gotcha.
I think adapting graphic novels, there's too much in there. Where if you just take 2 of the mini-series stuff, you can make a better story.
Another one I liked was Speeding Bullets. The Elseworld story,
yeah.
Speeding Bullets, was fantastic.
That would be good.
Do you guys have some favorites that you'd like to see? Not saying that we will, but just favorites that you would like to possibly see?
I mean, I try and nudge Jim every 9 to 12 months on the War of Jokes and Riddles. I'd love to do that.
That's great.
That would be fun. I like Camelot 3000. Or
I
like
would have loved to
Omega
do
Man.
Camelot 3000, yeah, and then the Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil, Ra's al Ghul storyline. That would make a perfect film. Readapted again after, 30 years ago, we did it in Batman animated, but now we can really do it, as an R-rated. But I'm sure that's going to end up being incorporated into the new James Gunn universe.
But we could do it in animation really well.
Yep.
Just saying.
Speaking of the James Gunn universe, you guys have such a great dynamic, and you guys tell stories in animation beautifully. What can James Gunn's DC universe kind of learn from what you guys have done in the animation side?
Well, for us, it's always been, because we grew up fans, we also wanted to be comic book artists and writers. In our heads, we know the characters, and what's always stuck there is doing the real version of what you grew up with, and stick with that. Don't vary from that, ever. There's no point, there's no reason. You want to vary characters or anything else, create a new character. and do that. But for the majority of the DC characters that have been staples of the company for years, stick with what they always were. Don't fuck with them.
What I like to say about these adaptations
One
is
more and we're R. Okay.
that was your one F.
All right, don't screw with them.
What is it? Or bleep it and your flick. Don't flick with them. What we try to do with these adaptations is give you the thing you remember, and it isn't always beat for beat because these stories are often told over a long period of time, and there are threads that never get tied up and things you don't remember, and maybe it wasn't as clear, but we try to take them and say, what did we remember when you think of this arc? And that's what we try to put that together in a way that tells a story that you think you remember.
Well, you guys do such a great job of crafting these stories, and visually they're stunning. And I want to thank all you guys for joining us here today at Screen Rant's Shooting Suite at Comic-Con 2023. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. I
thank
hope
you.
you enjoy the film.
I can't wait. Tonight at what
Tonight,
time?
10 o'clock.
9:45.
Nine something? I don't know.
The wisdom.
Just be in the,
Nine.
just
I
be
think
in
it's
the
at 9.
theater.
I think it's at 9 tonight. Yeah, be there at 9
there at
tonight.
9.
Thank you guys so much for your time. We
thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having us.